Now I invite our Chief Guest, Dr. Jitendra Singh, Honorable Minister, PMO and DOPT, to deliver his inaugural address.
President of the All India Ophthalmological Conference, Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya, the outgoing President, Dr. Maskati, my very dear friend, Professor M.C. Misra, Director AIMS, Dr. Katoch from ICMR, Scientific Chairman Dr. Lalit Verma, all the distinguished guests from across the country and abroad, members of faculty, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I have to thank you for having brought me over here to this platform and made me seated between two presidents, one each on the left and right of me. And I am here at the outset. I have to acknowledge that the Honorable Minister for Health, Shri J.P. Nadda ji, had to suddenly leave for a very pressing engagement and he could not be there. And somehow it occurred to him that I should be there to officiate on his behalf. So he called me up and I am there before you. The disadvantage of not being a planned invited chief guest manifests in a number of ways, which I was observing in the last few minutes. A, that you don't have a written text, as the association always provides to whoever is the chief guest well in advance. So in the next couple of minutes, you will be able to judge whether that has proved to be an advantage or a disadvantage in this evening's case. B, that you need to have somebody like me because you need to have a chief guest. So, I have been one of those in the medical fraternity who had been for long practicing of not practicing the tradition of inviting a politician or a minister for a chief guest. And before elaborating on that, I'll tell you about the third disadvantage. The third disadvantage is that the audience does not know the chief guest and the chief guest does not know the audience. And therefore, there's a pleasant likelihood of being either being over-introduced to the great delight of the person who is the chief guest, or sometimes being under-introduced. So being a member of the fraternity and breaking all the barriers of formality, I think, owe to you all, the grand galaxy of academicians over here, to first of all introduce myself. My name is Jitendra Singh. I am a graduate from Stanley Medical College, Chennai, many years ago. I did my post-graduation in medicine and then super specialization in endocrinology. By design or default, I happen to be National Professor of Endocrinology. And the last conference of RSSDI Diabetes, which is the largest diabetes association in the world, and was organized in Greater Noida in the newly started India Expo Center. I happen to be Chairman Scientific Committee. Coming back to the point that I was trying to make, that till as long as, because I think I can't even make a count of the number of conferences that we have been a part of, at least up to 2000 AD, we followed this practice of not inviting a political being for a chief guest. Which of course will go against the ministerial clan. But as I said, now having been here by default and without a written text, I have the liberty to speak as a freelancer. And this tradition we had inherited from some of the older stalwarts. In Delhi we had people like Professor M.M.S. Ahuja, because that was the department I was associated with. In Chennai we had Sam G.P. Moses, who were vehemently against the very idea of inviting someone like me to be. So we followed this practice of having one amongst us, the most eminent one. Like one of the 2 Lifetime Achievement Award winners this evening are much more deserving to be the chief guest than somebody like me. And then at the turn of century around 2000, what happened was the younger lot who took over from us, both in the organizing committees as well as the scientific committees, they started suggesting, they said, sir, you have to give up this practice. Luckily for them and unluckily for us, the earlier generation of stalwarts was also on way out. Half of them dead, half of them in oblivion, not active. So this was now the next generation taking over. And we gave up after some amount of discussion, because both in API and RSSDI we have huge bodies and not much of brainstorming takes place. And the argument that they put forward was that, sir, if we carry on with this practice, we do not get coverage in the media. And now that we are into the era of all these electronic fanciful channels, if you have a minister or a politician, at least he'll arrange coverage on his own. So for the last 15 years or so, we departed from that routine and we started this. And the amusing experience was, soon after we started that, we had a conference in Chennai, and the newspaper called Hindu, which is the most popular newspaper over there, reported next day about what had been said about diabetes in my case, or about eye in your case, by the minister rather than by the faculty. So the minister's talk became the expert talk. And then the competitive spirit became so intense that on occasions when we do not get a minister, we call for somebody else, some lesser minister, if not lesser minister, even lesser minister. And there have been occasions when one of our young organizing committee boys managed to get a speaker of an assembly. He was not a minister, but at least he was wearing a dhoti. There was only one occasion, because I hope some of us, if not all of us sitting over here, will go back and give a kind thought to what I am saying. Then of course I'll take 2 minutes also to do the ministerial talk for which I have been called. So only one solitary occasion when I was to organize a conference. We were in the All India Institute and we approached the then Prime Minister, Mr. I.K. Gujral, who was there very briefly. And he told us very bluntly, he said, look here, I know you doctors detest politicians. You don't think very high of them. And yet I wonder why for an inaugural ceremony you come to invite us. So I told him, no sir, we look upon you as more of an intellectual. Anyway, I hope what I have said also means a lot between the lines. But having said that, I have to compliment the organizers, at least on 2 accounts. A, that the inaugural ceremony is the least attended ceremony. And yet you have a hall full. I think I need to clap for that. We have been organizing conferences where we have to go looking for the audience in the restaurants, in the bars, in the shopping corridors. But here you have. So, that either means that you have an intense, irrepressible interest both in the subject of conference as well as the person sitting on the dais for inauguration, or maybe you have yet to discover other places to visit. And the second reason for which I have to compliment you again is that the moment I entered into the lounge of the hotel, I asked how many delegates, and I was told 8,000. So I thought, for 8,000 delegates, you have a venue like Ashoka and you can manage it. It's really a commendable job. The last conference that we organized in Hotel Ashoka was in 2006. We had about 6,000 delegates, and thereafter we took a conscious decision in the executive committee that we would rather earmark venues and cities in the country where we would have organization. So we have earmarked actually 4 cities, and now the 5th one has been accepted this year. One was Delhi, but Delhi only because the new India Expo Center had come up. The other one was Chennai, 3rd one Bangalore, 4th one Hyderabad, with the new center having come in. And of course Calcutta with the Science City and other places. So 5 centers. This year we have approved of Lucknow because they have come up with a new center as well. So we institutionalized a process. We constituted a committee of some of the executive members who would visit the venue and examine the logistics, examine the potential venue for the conference, the connectivity, etc., and then approve. Because with the number of medicos on the increase and with the generosity of the pharmaceutical companies, we have a lot of tourism element also attached with the academics, which is of course a healthy phenomenon. Because when you go for academics, you can't just sit idle. If you go to Agra, you have to visit Taj Mahal as well. So the number swelling up, and in spite of that, if you can manage a conference like that, that is indeed a commendable job. The advantage, I said in the beginning, of being on the faculty is that you have slides you carry with you. You don't have to recall anything. Just read what is written. Some resident may prepare it for you. You just have to project it. And the time deadline is also decided. But and to be in a conventional written text, as I found, also is an advantage. But the disadvantage of this, I will put across you, because like many of you, we too have been bangling into research all our lives. Very early, when I had just completed my post-graduation, I was, and much before I went into a private sector, I was given a government job, but I was not given a placement. So they asked me to be a part of the president's entourage. The president, whenever he visits, you have a huge queue of presidents. So I was last in the queue, being a very young person. I didn't have to do anything, just to watch what is happening from the wings, because my turn to even go closer to the President of India never came. So we went to a convocation where the written text of the President was distributed, as is the customary. And after that, when the President came to the dais, late Gyani Zail Singh ji, so he was a very witty person and very good at delivering his speeches in Urdu. So he said कि ये जो मेरा text था ये तो अब तकसीम हो गया, so you take it as having read. ये तो बात खत्म हो गई. So I don't have to read it because it's already been distributed. So this written text which we bring can in fact be xeroxed into about 300 copies and distributed, and we don't have to take the trouble of even speaking it. But then he said, hold on, turn to page number so and so. So everybody started turning. बोले पन्ना नंबर 5, 6 जो भी है. अब ये आखिरी पैराग्राफ है, ये आप नहीं पढ़िएगा, बाकी सब पढ़ लीजिए. So everybody started reading actually, what was it? So he said कि यहाँ आने से पहले मैंने अपने सेक्रेटरी से कहा था कि महिलाओं की शिक्षा पर थोड़ा बल देना, एक पैरा लगाना. पर यहाँ जितनी PhD की डिग्रीज दी गई ये सारी महिलाओं को दी गई, तो पैरा गलत हो गया. So that also is a disadvantage. We have to take care of pre-made slides. I have known of certain more smart friends who have used same set of slides for years together. Cycling, recycling, recycling. So in the modern era of internet and all those things, we have to take care of all these pitfalls. And coming back to the subject of this evening's discussion, I am glad that a specialty which was not so much into the focus in spite of its being so important has come up very much into the front line of the medical concerns. But I still always believe that as far as non-ophthalmologists like me are concerned, we need to be educated more than others. And I have been saying so among endocrinologists, diabetologists for two reasons. I always ask them how baffling and embarrassing it is that diabetic retinopathy, for example, is the most preventable complication of diabetes, and one of the commonest cause of blindness in India is diabetic retinopathy. So I think that single anomaly or paradox speaks volumes about how much we need to educate ourselves, or we need to expose ourselves to ophthalmic guidance, which we hardly think is necessary. The second part is that, which I have been telling, I was here even day before yesterday, releasing the API textbook of medicine. Most of us, and the second commonest cause, like as far as the diabetic complications are concerned, as I said, the most preventable cause of blindness is one of the commonest causes. And similarly, foot amputation, next to accident, the commonest cause of diabetes and still the most preventable cause. And with tongue in cheek, we should not be hesitant to admit that one of the reasons which I tell my colleagues is that many of us who are in general practice or physicians hardly bother to look into the eye, or hardly bother to ask the patient to remove his shoe, because we don't have time. We don't have time to tie our own laces. So who would wait for a patient to remove his shoe, and the kind of shoe wears that are available these days? It takes so long for them to remove and put it on. By that time you can finish out 2-3 patients. And that textbook teaching of, looking for small marks of pressure areas, small marks of some vascular change occurring go unnoticed. And so is the case of with eye. I remember when we were, at least in my times, it's about a generation ago or so, the very day you got admission into post-graduation, even in general medicine, the first thing that your professor would ask you to is to go and fetch a fundoscope, an ophthalmoscope. And I remember coming from a village, I didn't have much of money, so I carried all the coins and fetched one. Because that was considered an essential part of the paraphernalia, but now you don't have. Even our residents in medicine department and endocrinology department are trained to write call to ophthalmologist, and it about ends everything else. So unless we get over this tendency, how are we going to talk about all those tall plans and schemes of preventing blindness and taking care of the eye, and then blaming the government for not having done so? So I think that is where we have to actually begin. Of course, there are certain lapses on the part of the government which the present government has tried to make up. And one of them was that the budget allocated for health purposes was very small, which the present government has committed to increase. And the budget which was allocated was also allocated for more media-savvy problems like AIDS, etc. But then, it is for us to come out with innovations and suggestions. So even if there is a huge budget, and I refer my patient to somebody like Dr. Muscati, only when the patient starts telling me that I can't see anything around, who is to be blamed? So it has to start from us. That is one thing I remember long back when this fashion of specialization, the super specialization started. We had the old-time physician called Dr. Golwala in Mumbai, who said we are creating compartments. And indeed so. We have surgeons who boast that they have done 20 bypass surgeries, but they have never seen the patient. And if you ask the patient, he would know the name of the doctor, but he can't identify the doctor. Because the doctor walked in with a mask and the patient was also unconscious, or maybe just saw him on the television. And I think the same thing is going to happen now in ophthalmology also, because when you have telemedicine and teleophthalmology, you could easily get a picture of the fundus. You could email it to an eminent consultant and get his advice without having a look into your eye. And as the mushrooming of specialists and super specialists occurs, we might have a specialist each for each eye, one for the right eye, one for the left eye. So what I am trying to know, we already have podiatrists, now we may have fingerist, somebody for finger, somebody for the toe. So what I am trying to say is that this holistic part, which is being lost, and the blame is always, it's very conveniently left to the government, because I have also to defend the government and speak on its behalf. I remember long time back, about 7-8 years ago, we organized a conference of diabetes in Ahmedabad. And the present Prime Minister was the then Chief Minister there. And we invited him over as a chief guest. And our president, like good president, today you have a galaxy of presidents over here, started narrating a huge list of doctors' grievances, which of course he was expected to do by the fraternity when the Honorable Chief Minister was there. We don't have this, we don't have that, we don't have this. The problems of the working doctors, the government doctors, the non-government doctors, the tax problems, the sale tax. So the Chief Minister, who is now the Prime Minister, responded with just one sentence. He said, I have noted on all that, but I have just one question. Why in spite of that, you doctor friends are ready to spend lakhs and lakhs as capitation fee to have your own sons and daughters becoming doctors? If it is such a tremendous job and a hell of a job, why should ask your children to become so? And I was observing, even when somebody like the president or somebody like me says that my son is not a doctor, or any successful doctor says so, he says so with a slight amount of pinch in the heart. I wish my son was also a doctor. So we have so much problem. बहुत मुश्किल है डॉक्टरी करना, बड़ा मुश्किल. समाज भी तंग करता है, लोग भी कहते हैं पैसे खाते हैं, ये फिर भी डॉक्टर बेटे को बनाना है. So that means we are also to an extent lesser or greater, may not be very truthful to ourselves or speaking lie to ourselves. But and for 3 or 4 months when I had the opportunity of looking after science and technology department, wherever I would go, it is just the reverse over there. All the senior fraternity would tell me, sir, now you are also part of the scientific fraternity, you must do, we are having a shortfall of young scientists, not coming over to government sector. Like we have shortfall of young specialist doctors not joining the government sector. I know of institutes where in the Department of Endocrinology you have the head of department, the bottom is empty. So one day in Nagpur I asked them, I said I have to this question of yours, I have a question, an answer which is in the form of question, but I would not answer it. I would not ask you right now. I will just place it before you. You go home and ask yourself, because it will be too embarrassing for you to answer and too embarrassing for me to hear. And I said, the question is, how many of you have actually asked your sons and daughters to become scientists in a government laboratory? I said, I'm not asking this. You go home and ask yourself. So we want our neighbor's son to become a lecturer or a resident professor in a government institute, and our own son to join some corporate hospital. So this contradiction, unless we are able to bridge, we would not be able to extract justice from the government also, because only then the government will be in a position to look at us with logic and not be able to answer. But having said that, I again welcome you all, and I'm sure you are going to have a good stay in Delhi. As a good chief guest should always tell you, I'm sure in the aircraft you must have heard Chhala Bhutura and Bengali sweets. That's what the air hostess says when you land in Delhi. That we hope. But I will tell you, as a member of the scientific fraternity, I have been propagating, when I was handling science and technology, that we have the oldest laboratory of subcontinent in India, which is called NPL, National Physical Laboratory. Most of us living in Delhi are not aware of it. So I wish some of us would go there also. It was established in the British era and then re-questioned soon after independence. And once again, I think more than you, it is my privilege to be among you, even though by default, but I am there. That is what counts. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.